Welcome you everybody to the live stream. Oh, Cool Cat, I am not tired of this track by now. I don't know how long. I listened to that other track for, freaking 3-4 years, whatever. I don't know how long it'll take. This is a hype track, though. Come on. Like, does that not get you pumped? I should do a freestyle contest where you have to use that track and see who does the best edit. Oh, and then I could edit them all together like those things they do with the musicians where all the musicians play along and they cut them together with the different solos. That would be so cool. That would be so cool. Plenty. Is that a good idea, or am I just... Tell me the truth. Don't just be like, yeah, Bardwell, it's a good idea. Would that be cool? Would people watch that? I don't know.
I don't know. Do you... I don't know. It depends on how many times you've cut to yourself before the stream and have stuff, right?
What do you mean?
Is that what...
No,
maybe
what do
I'm
you tell me?
confused about what you're saying.
I was thinking of
make
just...
a highlight compilation of the beginning of the stream? Is that what you're saying?
No. That would be just of me dancing.
Yes.
No, that would be lame. No, I agree. That would be stupid. What I mean is, what if I announced that I was going to do like a freestyle edit or contest? I don't know if there would be a prize or just invite people to enter. I don't know exactly the structure. But the only requirement is you do a freestyle edit, you do a flight using that song as the music. So you would try to edit along with the music, fly, interpret in a way, and then I take all the entries and I like cut the best parts out and put them together into a single edit and post it with that song. Because I don't know, that song gets me so pumped and it makes me want to go fly freestyle. But then every time I fly freestyle, I'm like, nah, this is lame. I suck. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That'd be kind of neat. Yeah. It's like a sort of like a community video.
Yeah, like a community spotlight video or something. Aeroscare says as long as it's only 20 seconds because TikTok made everyone not be able to pay attention any longer than 20 seconds. Fair. No one would watch. It would just be for me and Vingent. I would message him and be like, bro, look what we did with your song. And I imagine that he's still small enough that he would be like, check it out and be like, whoa, that's really cool. You're a cool guy. Want to hang out? And I'd be like, cool. And then we'd go hang out and he would make music out of something we did together. And then Sorry, now I'm just what is it they call it when you're just making up a fantasy for some creator who doesn't even know you exist? Simping? Am I simping? No, that's not quite right.
Not quite. Yeah.
Mary Sue? No, that's not. Anyway, and then we do karate in the garage. That's right. Chopper FPV caught the vibe. Chopper FPV caught. That's the vibe we're going for. Me and Vengent walking around. That's not what we're here for, though. We're here to answer questions. We're here to answer your questions about FPV. Blunty, make sure this one's queued up right here about the new analog Speedy Bee module. Blunty's going to be queuing the questions up. Here's what that looks like on my screen. I got a list of all the stuff here, and the questions Blunty has queued up here, and we're going to be going through and answering them. If you want to make sure I get your question, you could hit the $sign right here. And I typically do this at about the half-hour mark, at the bottom of the hour, as the radio announcers say. I typically do it at about the half-hour mark. I start reading super chats. I keep reading super chats until all the super chats are read. So if you want to leave a super chat, we will start getting to those a little later in the stream. And of course, I can't start a stream without saying thank you to my patrons over on the Discord server. This is my Discord server over here, the coolest Discord server in all of FPV. I will fight anybody who has a Discord server. Mr. Steele, UAV Futures. What are some other big? I got a folder of them right over here. All of these guys, they're cool guys. Weebleed FPV, Pilots Lounge, Speedy Turtle FPV, UAV Futures. I will fight all of you that my Discord server is the coolest, certainly the nerdiest. And I thank these people for supporting me and being over there by answering some of their questions too. But before we do that, I want to tell you two things. First of all, after the live stream today, nope, wrong window, sorry. After the live stream today at 3 p.m., in other words, just about 2 hours from now, whenever now is for you, I will be doing an AMA on r/FPV. Thanks to the moderators of r/FPV for inviting me to be their monthly AMA. Oh, where's this getting cross-posted to? Mini quads. Oh. Nice. FPV racing and multicopter. I'll be doing an AMA. You can see already there are 118 comments. Jesus. I am going to be doing an AMA for a million years. I will be answering questions for a little while over there after the live stream. I'm tempted to stream it as well, just because it feels like that's the kind of thing that I would be streaming. But I'm worried that if I'm streaming it, then I will just say the answers and not write the answers. And the sort of point of an AMA is that you're interacting on Reddit. I don't know, Blunty. Does anybody do a live stream while they live stream while they AMA? I think in that case, like what I remember is that someone else would type the answers while they just said the answers, but I can type.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much how it's been done in the past that I've seen, is that there's somebody handling the in-between there.
But I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting idea, because then it'd almost be like another Q&A stream, because you're just answering the questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know but that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried it would just become another Q&A stream and not, like, the goal of the AMA is to get people on, to be an AMA, I don't know. I'll think about it. But I will be doing that, so check that out afterwards. And that's all we'll say about that. There's one other thing I wanted to do before we get started with the questions. Blunty, I mentioned this to you before the stream. And that is, if y'all haven't seen this post from Bot Grinder, 28 grams whoop the planet. As you can see, I haven't finished watching it. I watched the first, well, I watched more than 3 minutes. I don't know why that's on 3 minutes. I watched the first 5 or 7 minutes of it and didn't finish it because I had to go out and run an errand this morning. But this, I can't play the music. It's definitely got copyrighted music. I do not want to get any of that nonsense on me. This post by Botgrinder is a little mini skate movie about FPV. It is so fun. It's so fun, and just like I love the fact that, well, I don't know if this is an effect or if they actually like recorded it on VHS. It's shot in 4:3, which is what all these tiny whoops use, and also just makes me feel like it's the 90s. The video quality, it just feels like an old skate video, and is just captures a vibe of I'm gonna confess, like when I sat down to make a movie about FPV, on some level, this is the kind of thing I wanted to make. I wanted to make something that captured like the vibe of FPV, the feel of going out and ripping with your friends, and just how great that felt. And what ended up happening was I made a documentary because I'm a giant nerd, and I there's nobody more capable of capturing the vibe of a day of ripping with your friends than Botgrinder, and I'm glad he finally did it. So go check that out. Botgrinder is just about to cross 40,000 subscribers. You can certainly see that I'm one of them, and if you're not subscribed to him, go check this video out and see if it warrants a subscription. We can get him over 40K. Anyway, yeah, really fun. Really fun. So let's get some questions queued up now that we've got all that out of the way. This question is from Interpret Null, who asks, if you only had a DJI setup, like Goggles 2 or V2 or something, and wanted to get a whoop setup for indoors in the winter, what would you get as a ready-to-fly kit? Used goggles and a Mobula 6, something else. I don't think you have to go analog just to fly indoors, but it's definitely true that any DJI drone, any drone, even with a naked vista, like let's say you got something like the Flywoo. Let's see here. Is this the one? Yeah, this is a good choice. So this is an example of the kind of thing I would steer you towards, because this is just about the smallest thing that carries a DJI video transmitter. You can see here they've taken the Caddx Runcam Wasp, which is basically a Caddx Vista. It's just the same thing under a different name. And they've nakedized it and mounted it on a 2-inch, which I believe is an 85 millimeter. And we struggle a little bit with that math. And to be honest, if you're used to how an 85 millimeter whoop flies, you're going to think this flies really badly. You're going to think it's heavy. You're going to think it's not very agile. And the additional weight is going to compromise the durability somewhat. But if you're looking for a micro-sized drone that carries a DJI video transmitter, this is the kind of thing that you're going to end up getting. You could go up to a 95 millimeter. But now you're starting to get more into sort of cine-whoopy range, and the ability to kind of rip around indoors is going to be compromised. I think this is like, I'm sure that somebody makes a 75 millimeter with a Vista on it. It's hard for me to imagine it being any damn good because of the weight. And personally, this is just about as small as I'd feel comfortable going. So I'd steer you, well, I've flown this exact quad and thought it was pretty good, although I mostly flew it outdoors. But I would steer you in this direction or something like it, with the caveat that it's like, if you really want that indoor whoop experience, then you're going to go to something like Walksnail HD0 or Analog, which are going to be significantly lighter. But you're going to have to get a new set of goggles for that, and you probably don't want to do that. Is RaceWire still popular? I would say no. No. The only time I use RaceWire nowadays is if I cut my motor wires and I don't want to replace the motor or extend the wires. It's a lot easier to extend motor wires with RaceWire than to make a splice. A splice is always kind of ugly and bulky. So it's I use race wire when and also if I cut the wires one time, then putting the race wire exactly where they got cut might protect them from being cut again. But I don't think the days of like just putting race wire on quads, I think those days are pretty much gone. Let's see here. Will you be testing the new analog module from SpeedyBee and comparing it with others? Only night. I'm not going to promise that I will do it, but I am definitely interested in doing it because I think that having another analog module out there that is on par with Rapid Fire and TBS Fusion would be very beneficial. Right now, Rapid Fire and TBS Fusion, and then in a very slight third place is SkyZone SteadyView, but they're sort of up here at the top, and then kind of everybody else is like down here, because those analog modules do, number one, they have a more sensitive receiver chip that is literally just able to pick up weaker signals, and number two, they have two technologies. One is sync pulse reconstruction and one is frame combining. And these two technologies help keep the video, sync pulse reconstruction helps keep the video from rolling when the sync pulses get destroyed. And frame combining helps keep the video from flashing when the antenna, instead of diversity switching, which results in flashing images, frame combining means the image stays steady and doesn't flash. And together, they really improve the ability to fly through interference and breakup. And those three things, frame combining, sync pulse reconstruction, and whatever the name of this chip is. It's not the RX 5808 chip that is commonly used. It's some other chip whose name I don't know off the top of my head. Those three things put these guys on a tier of their own. So I believe that SkyZone SteadyView has those things and deserves to be tested, especially because it's coming in at a competitive price. Yeah, 1IFPV, you are correct. 1IFPV points out that with the SteadyView, you should only buy the recent, newer receivers, like the V3, I think is what it is, or V3.3. They changed the hardware to resolve some incompatibility issues with certain cameras that resulted in rolling images. Sven says, my Goggle X will come tomorrow, finally. I hope they get the final firmware online soon. Yeah, Madstech released a video complaining about this, that the SkyZone Goggles X, there is not a firmware you can download. Let's just double check this. Let's make sure that we are being accurate at the time that I'm saying this. So here's the Walksnail webpage. Firmware, Avatar 344015.beta. Oh, maybe. Maybe. I can't remember the version number. Well, let's look over here on walksnail.app, which is actually where I go. Oh! Oh, wow. Okay, well, we're not going to touch 3642. 344015. No, that's just... Yeah, but does that have...
No, it's between the two versions. So it's like...
Does that have
somebody just asked me about it yesterday.
So if we go in here, I believe you, but we're gonna look anyway. If we go in here, we're gonna just be the slowest live stream ever. So no, so there's no firmware for the Goggles X in here. The Goggles X does not have avatar_GND. It's avatar GND_X. So currently, it looks like you cannot download. Does the 36 version? It must, but it's got a bug. Yeah, so it looks like the 36 version you can download for Goggles X, but this warning here says, do not fly or fly at your own risk. This firmware could fuck you up. Okay, so if you buy these goggles, oh, you guys couldn't see that because I was zoomed in. You cannot download firmware to reflash your goggles, period. I have I have a link to a Google Drive link with a firmware that you can have that I can't give out. Walksnail gave it to me, but it's not for public distribution, and it wouldn't be responsible of me to give it out. But it would be responsible of me to say, how the hell do you sell a product and ship a product and don't have the ability for your customer to download and flash firmware for the product? Well, why would you need to do that? It comes with firmware on it, so why would you need to reflash it? Well, I guess you're right, but still that's annoying. And there is no matching firmware for the VTX. So if you get the goggles, you're going to constantly get a firmware version warning every time you power up the goggles. And that's, again, not a deal breaker, but certainly annoying. So what was the question? What's your opinion? Oh, I hope they get the firmware online too. Me too. It's really like Walksnail does so many things so good and then does some things and you're like, what the hell are you thinking? And I get it. I also am extremely unprofessional and bad at my job. Like, there's a few things I do apparently really well because enough people like them that I've been able to make a career out of this. But, like, there's other things where I'm just horribly incompetent, and anyone who knows how to run a business would be horrified by how I do them. And I don't know. That's just life. I feel like maybe I identify with Walksnail in that respect. Blunty, the older I've gotten, the more experience I have with the world, the more I realize that no one has it all figured out. I know this, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yeah. You look up to people your whole life, and you assume that the people you're looking up to, like, have a general grasp on, like, their job and their life. And then you figure out that, like, they have, like, one skill that they're really good at, and they're a complete moron at 17 other things. And somehow that's enough. That's enough to make you successful, which I guess should be encouraging. Like, all you have to do is be good at, like, one thing, and you can succeed.
It would be unrealistic for someone to be... It's a trade-off, right? I don't know. It seems like a trade-off. I mean, you can fight the trade-off the older you get because you have more time, but you have to learn a thing you want to learn, and you avoid learning things you don't want to learn while you learn the thing you want to learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, you are specializing as a part of, like, finding something you enjoy and then going into that field. So yeah. I think it's just natural to, like, I might work on a rocket, but I don't know how to fix my dryer. You know what I mean? And I could spend 3 hours trying to fix my dryer, and then why would I do that? Right?
It's more than that, though, because you've said I might make videos for YouTube, but I pay someone to change the oil on my car. That I have no problem with. But I'm even talking about something like I'll speak for myself, so I'm not appear to be pointing fingers at anyone else. I'm a YouTube creator professionally. What I'm good at is making videos that lead people, that impart knowledge and lead people to the solution to a problem. That's what I would say I'm the best at. But I'm not good at SEO. I'm not great at shooting a video. I'm like a terrible actual video creator. I'm terrible. I don't write scripts. I don't have really a lot of editing or revision. I don't have any marketing. My website is, like, really simple. I'm saying that there's things that are in the domain of my job that I'm objectively bad at, that I should be good at, that I'm not. And the same is true for, like, some, for example, CEOs that you might be thinking of who make rockets, or I tell you what, I had an existential crisis the day I realized that the people who are in charge of my government are, like, just as freaking dumb and incompetent at their job as in some ways I am at mine. Like, there's a few things they're very good at, and that's why they got elected. But then there's a whole bunch of shit that they should be good at that they are terrible at, and they are making all the decisions for the whole government. And that's really,
Yeah, we don't have to get into it too deep, but I think one of the fundamental issues there is that you are now describing the thing we described earlier. You're asking a government person to understand all these extra things, right? Because they also have to understand the government side and how to handle the things and how all the bills and laws and how the process works and who they got to talk to and where they get their money. You know, like all those pieces are the government part, and then they have to know all the specialist stuff. And like, why would they be there doing all the government part if they knew all the specialist stuff and they could just be working in the specialist field, right? And making more money doing it because it's not a government job. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, there's we'll wrap this topic up. We'll move on to the next one. But the upside, the downside is that there's a whole lot of people who are terrible at their jobs and are making decisions that affect your life. But the upside is that you could be one of them. All you have to do is be sufficiently good at like one thing, and all of your other inadequacies will turn out not to matter. The bar is really low. Blunty, you've hired people. I think you could agree with this. The bar is really low. If you're even good at one thing, you could be the best. You could be the employee of the month, right?
100%. Yeah. I think a great example of what you're talking about that just happens to be in social media culture right now is Sam Altman, OpenAI. Right? They got rid of Sam Altman and OpenAI, and then 2 CEOs in a row quit and said, you need to bring this person back because he knows how to do the things we're going to do and he can run this company properly, right? Like, you just have to be good at a specific set of things and then do that a bunch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on. We can take a few more questions from the regular chat before we start reading the super chats. Roger Maz wants to know, is there a way to change my Tyrannus QX7 from EU LBT to FCC? Yes, there is. Excuse me. Hang on one second. I'm gonna. I fear I'm coming down with a cold. I'm going to try and spare the stream from the effects of that. If you look in this is the QX7 Access. I don't know if they changed it for ISRM firmware, but let's look. So here's the firmware download, and we're not talking about the radio OS, right? That's not what we're talking about. That's OpenTX. We're talking about the internal radio module. If I download that firmware for the module, we'll just sit here for 14 seconds while we wait for it to download. Then X9D 2019, no. So it looks like for ISRM, there is only one file, and you change from LBT to FCC in the firmware, in the menu options. So then if I go to the original QX7, I think it's going to be different. Sit tight. The original QX7 had the ACCST module. Hello? Tyrannus QX7S. Woof. The world is moving on.
Load more. I think if you do load more, then you'll get it.
I got it. Here's the firmware for the XJT RF module. And if we download this, okay. Here you can see there's two firmwares, one for LBT and one for FCC. So the answer is, if you have the older QX7, then you download this firmware and flash it, and that changes it. If you have the newer QX7 with the access radio, it is in the radio menus, and you change it there. Continuing on. Dan Jones wants to know if I use the MT12 yet. Yeah, I have. I've actually finished that video that should come out Monday or Tuesday of next week. It's a hoot. If you are looking for a surface radio, here's what I would say. If you are an FPV pilot who also drives surface vehicles, cars, etc., and you want a Edge TX controller, get this. Okay? This is finally all the programmability of EdgeTX that you are used to in a surface controller. Now, you can get it with ExpressLRS in it, which I did, or you can get it with a 4-in-1 module, and there's like a chance that'll bind to some of the bind end drives that you already own. I don't know. You'd have to double check that. It does have the option to put an external module on it if you prefer. And the main reason someone would stay away from this, in my opinion, is that if the complexity of EdgeTX is like, you're like, I just want to drive my damn car. Look, go, stop, turn. What the hell? So if that's you, then don't buy this radio. But if you already like EdgeTX and understand EdgeTX, and you want a surface radio that includes that programmability, well, this is really the only one, but it's pretty. It's like it's good. It's a great radio. I mean, like I only have cheap throwaway controllers to compare it to, so it's a little unfair of a comparison. But like I've been using it for a week or so now, and just burning batteries through this Traxxas car that I bought and loving the shit out of it. The range, what's the range like? At 10 milliwatts, at 1000 hertz, which is the shortest range that ExpressLRS is capable of, I could drive it until I couldn't see it anymore, and then turned it around and very carefully drove it back, and I was still at 100 LQ. So like, unless you're doing FPV stuff where you put an FPV camera on your surface vehicle and then you drive it like behind obstacles and stuff, if you're just doing traditional ground RC stuff where you can see the car, the range is infinite. It's all you need. So I have not used the MT-12 with Crossfire, Jacob Stringfellow. I have no reason to expect that it wouldn't work because, look, it's an EdgeTX radio. There's a module bay. It will work with Crossfire. Bingo. Like, it'll just work. Anyway, I freaking love it. Like, I got it. And the first thing I did was I was putting the receiver... Welcome to EdgeTX. I was putting the receiver in the car, and the battery was plugged in, and I accidentally bumped the throttle, and the car went... And props off on the bench, right, boys? The car went and slammed into the wall, and I was like, oh, crap. And the very first thing I did is I programmed this switch to lock out the throttle. You see how this is red? Now it's green. Now the throttle is live. So I've got a lockout. I don't know what this switch is traditionally used for. Now the throttle's locked out. And then the other thing I did was I programmed this switch to be a dual rates, basically, where when I push this switch all the way out, the car's at like 33% throttle, so I can give it to my 4-year-old, and he's not going to immediately destroy it. And I was like, there you go, EdgeTX, baby. So I'm loving it. It's a solid radio. Okay, let's do the super chats. Let's do the super chats. We're going to start reading super chats until they run out. So if you would like your question to be answered relatively promptly, leave a super chat now. We'll keep reading super chats until we run out, and then we'll go back to the regular chat. Speed Limit Challenger says, I have a Beta FPV Cetus X, which comes with 4-blade props. I was curious if I put 2-blade props on, would I get a smoother flight? Looking to mount an Insta360 Go on it. Thank you for a $10 super chat, Speed Limit Challenger. That's a tough one, man. The 4-blade props are going to make more thrust. If you go down to 2-blade props, typically you would also have a significantly higher KV for the motors. Now, you're not going to do that. You're going to keep your same motor KV. So basically, you'll be cutting the thrust. I don't know if it's in half, but it's less. So now you're going to mount an Insta360 Go on it, and you're going to be at a significantly higher throttle position. Whether it'll be smoother or not, the motors are going to get a little more responsive because the props will be less loaded down, less drag on the motors. But if the PID tune is designed for the 4-blade props, going down to 2-blade props may have a negative effect. There's no way to say for sure, but tiny whoop props aren't that expensive. It's 1,000% worth just buying a set of props and trying them and seeing what happens. You probably won't break anything. I think you should go for it. Hostile Habitat, thank you for a $5 super chat. The Bardwell word per minute should be put to the test again. It's been a minute since it's been tested. Oh my goodness. My goodness. Okay, for $5. For a $5 super chat, we'll do it. Let's do a 1 minute typing test. Ready? Ooh, I'm not warmed up or anything. Oh my God, that's terrible. Hold on. That's awful. Hang on. Turn the sound. Oh my God, that's terrible. Hold on, we're going to restart. Oh. Uh. Ah! Oh, what was it? Shit, I hit backspace. 112 words per minute with 99% accuracy. I think I could do better. I could do a little better with warm up, but there you go. 112. There you go. You're welcome. You're welcome. Ed, 1995. What's your opinion on the Elegoo and Anycubic FDM? I need a large, affordable printer. I'm tempted by the Neptune 4 Max or the Cobra Max. Any thoughts? Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ed, for a €5. Ed, I have to, you know, a wise man knows when he doesn't know the answer, and a humble man has the humility to admit it. And this is one of those times. I have some experience with some 3D printers. I don't have any experience with those 3D printers, and I could not advise you. You say you need a large printer. So I'm guessing that some of the standard ones in the sort of 200 to 220 millimeter cube size are not what you're shooting for, right? The Bamboo printers are very good. They're the one that I'm most impressed with these days. But if you need the larger form factor, I'm not really sure what to recommend. So I have to respectfully decline to answer your question while humbly accepting your donation. There you go. Am I? Hang on. Oh, would you look at that? The preset knob on top of my camera is breaking, Blunty. That's what I use when I'm recording, and I put a LUT on it. That's what I use for streaming. But the switch was already in that position, and yet when I touched it, it clicked over. It's starting to wear out. Wow. That's something. Thank you, chat, for saving me from my own ignorance. Elegoo is better because of their great customer support. Keydi X-Max 3 is okay, but it's no Bamboo, says Madstech. Anycubic Cobra 2 Plus recommends Worm Freeze. Madstech says Bamboo. Yeah, the question, Ed 1995 would be, what volume are you shooting for? That's where we have to start. And if there's a Bamboo printer that suits you, that's the one you should get. They're amazing. So, thank you, Matt's Tech, for jumping in with some of that information. Hendrik DK. Blunty, queue up that question from Hendrik DK if you weren't going to. Make sure we get to that a little later. JC. No, but we're not going to answer that question yet. We're going to keep doing super chats like I said I would. Thank you for a $5 super chat, JC. I have a Walksnail 1S VTX and a new build, Mob 6. Mismatched firmware. Overheats very quickly. Is this the firmware? The overheating is not the firmware. The 1S VTX overheats very quickly. That's how they saved weight. They removed the heat sinks. You need to have a fan blowing on it, and even then it may overheat somewhat quickly. But you should get a small fan, like I'll show you what I have. Where's my fan? Where's my fan? Is it over there? Huh. Oh, there it is. I see it. Hang on. Okay. I have a small fan. It's just a little computer fan, and it's got a USB plug, and it plugs into a USB power bank, and I use that to blow on the VTX. That's just the nature of the 1S VTX.
He says it does in flight.
Oh, that's wrong. That's not the firmware, but like how is it? It's mounted in a Mob 6, so it should have plenty of airflow. No, it's not the firmware. Maybe you need to fly faster. I don't know, man. It's not the firmware, that's for sure. Mismatched firmware just means there's a different firmware on the goggles versus the VTX, but you could try turning the power down, but like, it's hard for me to say whether that's you have a defective VTX or if just maybe your Mob 6 isn't making enough air to cool it down. I don't know, man. You could turn down the output power, though. It's not the firmware, I'll tell you that. DJI Raw FPV, thank you for a $10 super chat. Will y'all ever expand the FPV business for people to get easy access what they need? We need a store location in New York. There's more indoor RC car locations than Tiny Whoops. Thank you for a $10 super chat, Will. DJI Raw. Who's y'all? Who are you yelling at? I think you're just sort of shouting into the void, and I get that. But the flip side is, like, what needs to happen is that a person needs to rent a building and start a store, right? And that, so when you say, well, y'all do, so someone has to do that, and that means that someone has to put up the money to do it, and that's why no one has done it. Do you know why there's more RC car locations than Tiny Whoop locations? Because the number of FPV pilots is so small, and the cost of running a retail store is so high that no one can afford to do it. Almost no one. There are rare exceptions. You have no idea how difficult it is to run a retail store around FPV. FPV as a hobby is constantly shifting what product it thinks is the best. And so a store that buys a bunch of stock is going to get stuck with the stock and not be able to sell it. So hang on. First of all, there's an extremely small number of FPV pilots. So the number of customers that any given store could have is extremely small. That's not true for RC cars. There's a shitload of people who drive RC cars because RC cars are easy to drive. FPV is hard. So you have a small user base. The user base is extremely picky. This month, such and such a product is hot. Next month, oh, it turns out that it's effed up or there's something better and nobody wants it. So it's extremely hard to keep inventory. You know how online stuff is always out of stock? The whole point of a brick and mortar store is that you walk into the store and you come out with the thing you want. How do you think that store would do when you can't get product from a vendor for 3 months at a time because the vendor just isn't shipping it? Online, you just go, it's out of stock, and you try and find it somewhere else. At a brick and mortar store, you would just never come back because everything would always be out of stock. Margins are terrible. Right now, stores operating out of the United States are being squeezed because stores like AliExpress are selling stuff at a lower margin, and people are just like, fine, yeah, we'll buy from AliExpress. I can save $40 off the price of my order. Done. And stores in the United States that don't even have a storefront, just a warehouse, and employees that they have to pay U.S. minimum wage are struggling to fight that. Never mind a small mom and pop shop in New York City, of all places. The reason it's not happening is because no one could do it and make money. So when you say y'all need to do it, when you say, will y'all ever expand? The answer is no, not until it becomes profitable. And these are all of the steps towards it becoming profitable. If such a store does exist, the only way it will succeed is by having a strong online presence and doing most of their business online, and then having a warehouse with a storefront that is incidentally a storefront. It's my opinion. Why is the outcry about the fact that Radiomaster had to publicly apologize to FreeSky for stealing basically all the... What? Thank you for 10 euros, grumpy old nerd. What? Radiomaster didn't steal the groundwork for Radiomaster's lineup. And if they did steal it, they stole it from Jumper. What is grumpy old nerd talking about? Blunty, do you have any idea? Does something happen that I don't know about? It's definitely possible. Does anyone know? Bunty, are you there? Oh, shit. Oh, shit, man. I got robot Blunty. Okay. They borrowed a lot from Jumper because the founder of Radiomaster was originally working with Jumper. I don't know the exact nature of their relationship, but when he left, Radiomaster's claim was that the separation of Radiomaster from Jumper included the rights to use some or all of Jumper's intellectual property. I don't think that Jumper agrees on this, and I don't know who's right, but if you were to say that Radiomaster stole from Jumper, then I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's, I could see how you feel that way. There was a letter in Chinese on the Radiomaster site. Where? Where? I don't think we're going to find it. News. Well, surely it'd be under news, right? Oh, you mean this? Maybe it's this. Can I translate this? Wow. I mean, I guess this must be what you're talking about. So, what this seems to be is apologizing. Basically, this seems to be related to Radiomaster receivers that were compatible with FreeSky. So Radiomaster released FreeSky compatible receivers and then seems to have come to an agreement with FreeSky to apologize for violating. But has nothing to do with their controllers, and it has nothing to do with the 4-in-1 project that's on the modules. It's only the receivers that they're talking about here. Interesting.
It's just presumably the same reason they removed their R8, right?
Yeah.
Remember that old thing where they had to remove certain D8 receivers?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because they were using the firmware from FreeSky, and I imagine this is just like a follow-up to that.
Oh, they didn't just reverse engineer it, but they literally used the exact firmware. My memory is that they were
actually, you could actually flash that device, like the device was flashable with their firmware or something, and they were maybe providing it or something. That was, because otherwise, why would they have had to remove it, right?
Yeah. But I don't agree with Grumpy Old Nerd's assertion that Radiomaster had to publicly apologize for stealing basically all groundwork for Radiomaster's lineup. That's not true at all. They apologized for a single receiver that used FreeSky's firmware. And that's like a tiny, tiny part of Radio Master's lineup. So there you go. That's how I would take that. What do you think Dave Portnoy would rate your pizza? Asks Bro Wild. Thank you for a $2 super chat. I know Dave Portnoy likes a crunchy crust and a thin crust. My pizza does skew towards the tavern style pizza that Dave Portnoy likes. But the crust is not super crunchy like he likes, in part because I'm cooking in a home pizza oven, and it's very difficult to get enough bottom heat to have a crunchy crust without burning the top. So I don't 100% understand Dave Portnoy's rating scale. I feel like on a good day I might get a high 6, and I know a high 6 isn't that good. But Dave Portnoy has high standards for pizza. Like on a good day, I feel like I could pull a 6. I think it would be unrealistic. I'd like to imagine that I could pull a 7, like a low 7. There's no world in which I could pull an 8 or a 9 from Dave Portnoy. Like realistically, I probably couldn't pull a 7. So. But I feel like on a good day I could pull a 6.
You just have to like really believe in your product and then be a super nice guy, and then you get free points.
I need the story. I need to tell him a story about my family or something. I went to look for any pictures I have of pizza, and I immediately Google showed me this, and this is way more important than a picture of pizza, if it'll ever frickin' load. So this is a groundhog eating Chick-fil-A by the side of the road. Anyway, that's my. Hang on. Let me find pizza. Sure. This is a pizza I made. I made this pizza. That's respectable. I don't think it's as crunchy. I think it's the number one place I'd get dinged. Like, I don't have the sag. My pizza will definitely hold up to the sag. I'm not sure it has the crunch that Dave Portnoy likes, but it's definitely thin and tends toward tavern style. I think I could probably pull a 6. I think it's a little too cheesy for him. He seems to like a little bit more of a 50-50 cheese sauce balance, whereas mine, I like to have like a solid layer of cheese on top of my See, I think it's topped a little too heavy for him. I think it's topped a little too heavy, and it's a little too saucy, but that's just, my personal preference. Meanwhile, this is my first night in Italy. Fabio and Maria took me to get some Neapolitan-style pizza. So, as long as we're looking at pictures. How clickbaity should a thumbnail be, asks Captain Bry. Yep, there it is. Thank you for $10 super chat, Captain Bry, and for all of your support when I have questions about ExpressLRS. So here's the thing. My definition of clickbait is that the thumbnail and or title do not accurately represent. They mislead the viewer about what's in the video. Okay? And that could be like there's people who try and skirt that line by having a title that like technically is accurate but is still misleading. Like you could be technically correct but still misleading. And I would say that's still clickbait. Like if I show a picture in the thumbnail of a guy about to put something disgusting in his mouth, and then it turns out in the video, so I'm going to be like, oh, that guy ate that disgusting thing. And then it turns out in the video, he held it up to his mouth, but then he didn't eat it. Technically, the thumbnail shows what's in the video, but it's still misleading, and I would call that clickbait. But the place that I differ from some of my commenters is some people seem to think that any thumbnail or title that is remotely enticing, any thumbnail or title that diverges from a rote description of Walk Snail Goggles X review. That is the only non-clickbaity title allowed. Any thumbnail or title that is remotely titillating, they go like, clickbait. So like, and I don't agree, because if you don't, the problem is that we're in this frickin' free-for-all brawl. When I pull up youtube.com, okay, here we go. I'm going to click on one of these videos. Which one's it going to be? I have to pick one. Right? I have to do things if I want people to watch my video, and I do, otherwise I wouldn't have made it. Then I have to do something to stand out as you're scrolling down this page. So in this case, America is fucked. Is that clickbait? Or is that just something titillating to try to get you to click, to catch your eye long enough to get you to click? Look at this one. Oh, this is a great one. This is a good video too. Look at this thumbnail. It's a saw biting into the human skin. Makes me want to click. But when I watch the video, I don't feel ripped off. I'm like, you tricked me into, it's like if you have a delicious piece of food and you put it in an appealing package, and I go, I open the package and I eat the food, and at the end I'm like, that was delicious. Thank you for making your package so appealing. What matters is not how clickbaity the title and thumbnail are. What matters is how you feel after you watch the video. And I think there's people who see a thumbnail and title that are vaguely titillating, and they go, clickbait, because they don't like feeling like you're playing games with their emotions, which you are. But if I don't play games with your emotions and try and kind of trick you into clicking the video, then the video won't be successful. So what I have to do is I have to trick you into clicking the video and then deliver the video so I didn't trick you at the end of the day. But that moment where you go, this thumbnail's clickbaity. Anyone who doesn't do that, no one's seeing their videos.
I posted one on the Discord that I feel like just rubbed a line for me the other day. Yeah. Which is Carl Jobs posted a video with this thumbnail here. It says, they kept the money. And I wonder what you think the video is about from seeing the thumbnail. Okay, so again, bearing in mind that the key metric for me at least is not how titillating the thumbnail is, but whether when I watch the video, I feel like I got what I was promised. This charity is lying to you. They kept the money. So when I click this video, I think he's going to tell me about a charity. It's going to be a charity that I give a shit about. If I click and it's some charity I don't give a shit about that I've never heard of, then I'm going to be like, oh, never mind, I'm not going to click away. So it's going to be a charity that like I've heard of or that I care about, that they are raising money that they're supposed to give away, and instead of giving it away, they're keeping it. Okay? What's the video actually about, Blunty?
The video is about a charity who has kept the money in an account and has not spent it. So they said for years they were donating. Yes, they said for years they were donating it, but instead they were putting it all into an account and claim they can't figure out where to donate it. Definitely fishy situation. More stuff has come out since, but at the time of posting, it's tough because I read it and I thought, oh, they stole the money, and I really wanted to know about it. And then I looked at it and I'm like, oh, actually the money's sitting in an account supposedly, and they're claiming without any other evidence that the money's in an account waiting to be given to people.
I will say, so that's not like. I don't have to be right as my first impulse. Like if I watched that video and instead of them stealing the money, they kept it and didn't distribute it, I still feel like the payoff that I expected when I clicked on the video would have mostly been delivered. It's about a charity that is not giving away the money that they're supposed to be giving away. I don't think I would feel too ripped off by that, even though my first guess wasn't exactly right. How did you feel?
I agree. I wish it would have said they never donated the money. That's much easier to me, right? Like you just say in all of the yellow text, they never donated the money.
But here's the thing, and we could go down this bunny trail for hours, and we won't. Yeah. They never donated the money. They never donated the money. That's 5 words, and it contains a negative. So a negative is inherently less punchy than a positive, because your brain has to go, not they kept the money, which evokes a picture of them keeping the money. They never donated the money. Do you see that? Like, you don't need me to explain this to you, but for the viewers, do you see that that's like a slightly less punchy, slightly less gripping? It requires a little more cognition, right? And it's 5 words instead of 4. So now it's more words that I have to read. And it is, they never donated the money is, I believe, objectively a worse thumbnail than they kept the money in terms of the number of clicks it'll get. So you, as a creator, have to make this balance. If I make a video that has a shitty thumbnail and title that no one clicks on, it doesn't matter how good the video is, no one will see it. And if I make a video that has a shitty clickbait thumbnail and title that you click on and then you get super annoyed that I lied to you and you click away, no one will see the video. And every creator has to find that line in the middle where the thumbnail and title are punchy enough that you click it, but not so punchy that it's misleading that you feel ripped off. It's a fine line. All right, Cat and Bri, I bet you thought you were just joking. And now you got a dissertation about thumbnails. Bro Wild says, why are you such a pizza connoisseur? Thank you, $2. Thank you for $2, Bro Wild. I used to work in a pizza shop. I worked at Papa John's in college many, many years ago. And I enjoyed making pizza. I enjoy eating pizza. I got into bread baking in my late 20s, early 30s-ish time frame. I started baking bread. I really enjoyed baking bread. So I started making pizza crusts, and I don't know, I've just always liked making pizza. Mostly just because I enjoy eating pizza. Matt Norton says, I have the Jumper T20S with a 2.4 gigahertz with ExpressLRS. Do I need the 4-in-1 to fly FreeSky D8? Not showing an internal RX, but it shows up with external RX. Matt, thank you for a $5 super chat. If you bought the Jumper T20 with ExpressLRS inside, you do need a 4-in-1 module to fly the FreeSky D8. You do not have an internal 4-in-1 module. You have an ELRS module, and it cannot bind to a D8 receiver. DJI Raw, again with a $10 super chat. Wait. DJI Raw has left another $10 super chat, the exact same super chat. I will graciously accept your additional donation, and thank you for that. Already answered that one. And we've got this one from Soham Thakur. What FPV system is better for a learning pilot? Thank you for 40 rupees. Soham Thakur, I would say analog is the safest bet because it's the least expensive and it has adequate performance to do what you need to do, especially because you're donating in rupees. I'm going to guess that you're in India, and some people in India have told me that it is very difficult and expensive to import FPV stuff and that you don't have a wide selection. Other people in India have ways of getting stuff into the country. Like I've talked to people who have a relative in the United States and they just ship stuff to the relative and the relative sends it over and somehow it gets through customs. Other people say that there's real problems. So obviously I don't know what situation you're in there, but analog is fine. If you decide to go digital, that's a little trickier. Each digital system has certain pros and cons and may have a better availability. They're certainly more expensive, though, and especially if you're shopping in rupees, you're kind of getting screwed by the exchange rate and import duties and all that stuff. And I think probably analog would be the one I would steer you towards. Okay. Oh, we got one more from Bro Wild. Opinion on the movie Prestige. Is that the... Oh, that's that one. Yeah. I will not scroll down on this because if you haven't seen this movie, it would be a crime for me to reveal anything about this movie to you. This is one of those movies where it's really best to go in cold and enjoy it. I love this movie. Love it. Absolutely love it. Directed by Christopher Nolan. Stars Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. Such a good movie. And unfortunately, I can't really say a lot more about it. But it's the kind of movie that you watch once and you go, oh, that was pretty good. And then you should watch it again, maybe not immediately, having seen it, having now seen the whole movie, you can go back and see just how much they were crafting the movie from the beginning, knowing what you know after watching the whole thing. It's an amazing, amazing movie. Big fan of it.
That sounds like you would describe Usual Suspects. Is it like that? Right? Where
yes.
You like watch it once and then you're like, oh, now I can go back and see what was happening, right?
Yes, although there's a part of me that I think it's because Usual Suspects is so known for the trope of the last minute twist that it feels a little bit tropey. And it's one of those things where it's become such a trope because of how good it is that you almost forget how good it is. And so I almost feel like a little offended that you're comparing The Prestige to Usual Suspects, because I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I see how you get that comparison, but The Prestige is so much better. But I'm probably underestimating how good Usual Suspects is/was because it's such a standard in that sense. Is there a different movie named Prestige? The Prestige.
I mean, there's a 1932 pre-code drama film called Prestige.
Now, there's another movie, though, that I always get Prestige confused with, and it's the one with Edward Norton. What's the movie about magicians with Edward Norton?
Now you see me? Now you...
No. The Illusionist. And Paul Giamatti. Jesus Christ, Paul Giamatti's aged. Okay, Paul Giamatti, what's happened to you, buddy? Oh, there you go. That's Paul Giamatti. Good old. This is a terrible picture of Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti should be suing someone for that picture. That's not okay. The Illusionist. I always get Prestige and The Illusionist confused. Like in my head, I don't even know if they're like similar at all. Anyway, no, this is The Prestige though. Okay. Alrighty, that's the Super Chats. We'll come back a little later in the stream, before the end of the stream. In the meantime, we will pick up some more of the questions that Blunty has queued up. Sealy FPV. Sealy? My friend has DJI O3 and goggles too. The OSD doesn't want to work. I already put the right preset. Are you sure that you loaded the Betaflight 4.4 preset? There is both a 4.3 and a 4.4 preset, and they are different and do not cross pollinate. Make sure you loaded the 4.4 preset, not the 4.3 preset. That could be a thing that could have caused this problem. That's my first guess. What's the best beginner radio? Asks Jesse Garcia. Jesse Garcia, that depends on your there's no one best. That depends on your budget. I do want to point you toward my website, fpvknowitall.com. The Ultimate FPV Shopping List. It has a section on controllers. Let's see if my edition of the Radiomaster Pocket has been done. No. So the Radiomaster Pocket is in the process of being added. That's the only change I would make. I would say these days, if you want to save the absolute most money, than the Radiomaster Pocket, but I think you should spend a little more and get a Boxer, a Zorro, or a TX16S, depending on your budget and your preference for size and portability and price. My recommendation is to get an ExpressLRS radio. ExpressLRS has an annoying learning curve that some people have no problem with it. Some people, it really makes them want to pull their hair out. Nevertheless, I think ExpressLRS is where receivers are going in the world of FPV. And I think it's one of those cases where if you get yourself over the learning curve, then it'll be worth it, and you'll get in general a much, much better experience overall. Ian asks, Ian Lewis, didn't you do the same thing, Ian? Why are you posting drone camps? Did Ian do it? Hang on. Ian Lewis trying to point fingers. But is he also guilty? I don't remember. No. He just said things got interesting. Okay, it wasn't you, Ian. I couldn't remember. I guess it was drone camps. Ian Lewis asks, is this clickbait? I don't think so. I mean, I think it's on the edge. But I feel like if you structure the video, like if this was the thumbnail, then I would want to start the video, because remember, it's all about, does your audience feel ripped off at the end, right? That's what it's about. Or does your audience feel satisfied, like they had a good experience? If I go to a 3 Michelin star restaurant and I'm expecting a steak dinner, and they bring me a tiny little sliver of steak with a dollop of something on it, and they're like, here you go, monsieur. And I eat it, and I go, okay, that was fine. Where's the rest of it? And then they go, here, that would be $500. It doesn't matter that it was a 3 Michelin star restaurant. I didn't have a good dining experience. If I go in there and I'm like, oh my God, that was the best steak I ever had. Wow. Then I feel like I had a good experience. That's all that matters. So in this case, if this was my thumbnail, I would want to start the video by talking about that Crossfire 900 megahertz. Why is Crossfire so successful today, even though there are some things like the fact that it's out of stock a lot of times, the fact that it's not the most technologically advanced anymore, and then say the reason Crossfire is hanging on by its fingertips is that it's a 900 megahertz, and now ExpressLRS is here. So I would need to structure the video in such a way that it didn't just leave the viewer to infer. Like, in other words, I can't just launch into a review of the ExpressLRS module. If the thumbnail says Crossfire dead, almost, and then the video doesn't address that, then I feel like maybe I've been clickbaited. It's a little cheap. And I say that as someone who has been cheap in this exact same way in the past. So please, no one think I'm throwing stones at drone camps. But I will say, like, every time I do a thumbnail like this, I feel a little bit dirty. But I do it sometimes because, like, sometimes you just want those clicks. Do you
remember the old meme that was, like, from newscasters that would be like, I'm just asking questions? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's what it feels like to me. It's like, I don't know. I don't have to know the answer or any data about it or actually address it at all. I'm just asking questions. Right? I'm just bringing it up to your mind.
Yep. That question mark hides a lot of sins. I think it's part of it is that I think it's a valid question. I think that TBS Crossfire is slowly losing market share. I don't have data to support that, but like, I know that ExpressLRS is gaining market share. Look at the number of bind and flies with ExpressLRS today versus 2 years ago. There's a lot of them. So I know that here's the thing. ExpressLRS is gaining market share. The FPV market as a whole is not growing. If anything, it's contracting. Therefore, Crossfire is losing market share. I mean, that's not like, you could say, no. ExpressLRS market share ExpressLRS is eating FreeSky's market share, and Crossfire is holding its own. I can't prove that that's not true, but my gut feeling is a lot of the people who are buying ExpressLRS, some of them would have bought Crossfire, and they're not. So I think it's not entirely out of left field to say it does this threaten crossfire. ZS wants to know, can you explain why people say storage voltage is 3.8 volts when battery manufacturers put 3.7 volts on the packaging? Yes, because 3.7 volts is the nominal voltage and 3.8 volts is the storage voltage, and those are two different things. For any given battery chemistry, there are several voltages that you should know about. One is the empty voltage, which for a LiPo is 3.0 volts. And that below that voltage, you damage the battery. One is the full voltage, and the full voltage actually is not like a hard number. Like a LiPo, you can charge to 4.1 volts, and it will actually last way longer than if you charge it to 4.2 volts. And you can actually charge a LiPo to 4.3 volts, and it won't just immediately light on fire. It'll just have a shorter lifespan. So there's this curve of max charge voltage to lifespan, and somewhere somebody decided that for a LiPo the max charge is 4.2 volts. I don't know how they decided that, whether it was just an arbitrary decision or whether there's some scientific basis. But so you've got the minimum and the maximum. You've got the storage voltage, which is the voltage at which the minimum change in the battery chemistry will occur. So 3.8 volts is where, if the battery's at 3.8 volts, it will last the longest in storage. And then 3.7 volts is the nominal voltage, which I assume is something like halfway between, let's see. No, that's not halfway. 4.2 minus 3.0 is 1.2 divided by 2 would be 0.6. So I don't know what the nominal voltage is. I don't. But 3.7 volts is the nominal voltage, and it really doesn't mean anything in terms of your daily use of the battery. The only thing the nominal voltage is used for is calculating the watt hours. When you calculate the watt hours, you multiply the milliamp hours times the nominal voltage. So I don't know why that is. Is FPV drone racing going down? Who knows? I don't know. How many? Look at the views for multi-GP nationals. Look at the number of entrants for multi-GP nationals. I don't have that answer in front of me, but that's what I would do if I wanted to know the answer to that. How do you add an analog module to the DJI V2 goggles? The best way to do it is something like the BDI Digidapter. This is the BDI Digidapter, and in my opinion, it's the best way to add an analog module to the V2 goggles because of how seamless it is. However, you will not be able to have like a patch antenna on the front. So if you use aftermarket antennas, you'll need to find some other way to mount those aftermarket antennas. Oh man, this was a long time ago. I could tell a lot about my videos by my thumbnail, like what year it was made.
What's the best?
Oh my God, kill me. My color grade was so bad. It hurts me. Oh God, it's so bad. Look at all my hair too. Where's all the gray in my beard? There's almost none. Anyway, when was this? 3 years ago. Oh my God, I've aged so much in 3 years. I still own that shirt though, so that's good. Oh, my color grade was so bad. Fabio. Oh my goodness. Look how bad it was. Jesus. Okay, anyway. Rick de Brewer wants to know, is there a way I can use ND filters to block the sun but still get no motion blur? What you want is a half ND filter, but I don't think that's going to work for a drone. So what you want is something like this. This is a half neutral density filter. And what you can see is that the top is neutral density and the bottom is not. And that's fine as long as your camera always stays horizontal. Right? But for a drone, of course, that wouldn't work. And I don't think anyone even makes a half ND filter for drones. So the answer to your question is no. Protentago asks, why is digital so popular when top pilots, Phoenix, Steel, Aux Plumes, etc., fly analog? Don't people want to fly like them and therefore use what they use? Digital is popular because it gives a better experience to the majority of people. I realize that that's probably going to be a controversial statement, and despite the fact that I just spouted it off the cuff, I tried to craft it carefully. You know, like Mr. Seal, like famously rejected DJI for a long time because he is so focused on low latency. And then he realized that DJI gives incredible detail, range, and penetration, and started using DJI for his cinematic and chase rigs, but still uses analog for his freestyle videos. I say uses. I don't actually know if, I mean, it's been a while since I saw him do a freestyle rip, so maybe I assume that's still true, though. I think he's sort of a diehard. In some ways, pilots like Phoenix, Steel, and Aux Plumes are outliers. They're not typical people. Most people aren't going to fly like them. And most people know that they're not going to fly like them. So when you take a typical person who's a mediocre pilot at best, and you give them the choice of a digital video link that has high definition, amazing range, amazing penetration, and an analog video link, that person is going to realize that they don't get any advantage from the analog latency because they're not that good a pilot anyway. Just to put it really bluntly. When you have somebody who is in the 99.9th percentile in terms of their skill, they can make decisions about their gear that work for them that don't work for anybody else who is not in that 99th percentile. You see this all the time. You see it in photography. You see it in music. People want to emulate some famous musician's guitar. And it turns out that unless you have their skill level, their exact setup is really bad for you or doesn't provide an advantage, right? Like a guitar with ultra low action is going to let a really skilled guitarist be able to play really quickly and cleanly. But for a mediocre guitarist, it's just going to be scratchy and noisy and shitty and have terrible tone because you don't have the hand strength to really press the strings and make the tone. You need a higher action. Okay, anybody who doesn't play guitar has no idea what I'm talking about. So there is a degree to which people want to emulate these guys. But the utility of the digital video link, in my opinion, is enough to overwhelm the sort of pointless desire to emulate a pilot. Buying Mr. Steele's quad isn't going to make you fly like him. Someone out there thinks that they will, and they want the experience, and so they buy his quad. And then they fly it, and they go, oh my God, how do you deal with this analog breakup? I hate this. And then they see a DJI quad, and they go, that's better, I'm going to do that. Because it turns out they don't fly like him anyway, no matter what they have. So that's how I would take that. The pilots... yeah. Hendrik DK, thank you, Blunty, for tagging this one. Radio Master Bandit module regulatory domain is FCC 915. What about the people in Europe? I'm like, am I wrong that any 900 megahertz ExpressLRS module can also do 868? Captain Bry. Captain Bry.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, any 915 module can be flashed, same chip.
Okay, but I'm gonna ask Captain Bry anyway because he's here and I like to say his name. They only advertise it as FCC 915, but it's both. Captain Bry, is that a flash option? Or is that in the web UI? Ian says change it in the Wi-Fi settings. Yeah, so you can change the region either in the configurator when you flash it, or Madstech says you can change it in the Wi-Fi settings in the web UI. Captain Bryce says you have to reflash it. That was what I thought too. Okay, so Madstack, Captain Bryce says you're wrong, and I agree with him because I think he's a dev. He knows better. So you have to reflash it, but you can change the region when you reflash it. Roger Maz, I answered your question way earlier in the stream. Rewind the stream, Roger Maz. I answered this question way earlier in the stream, like an hour ago. But you can stop asking it. I answered it. Okay. Okay, continuing on. Can you mix different brands for your ESC and flight controller? Yep, but sometimes you have to redo the wires between the ESC and the flight controller, but almost always it'll work. There are very rare cases, like there used to be, maybe there still is, but there used to be a Hobbywing ESC that the flight controller didn't have a 5-volt regulator, and the ESC had a 5-volt regulator. And in that case, almost every flight controller has its own 5-volt regulator, and it gets VBAT from the ESC. And that Hobbywing flight controller couldn't really be used with any ESC other than a Hobbywing ESC that had 5-volt on it. But that's an outlier. Should I go with the DJI V2 or the Walksnail Avatar X? Cat Army Leader asks. It's harder and harder to recommend the V2 goggle for someone just starting out. The V2 goggle is solid, and there are still Vistas out there that can be purchased. There are basically no... that's not even true. I just showed one. There are fewer and fewer bind and flies that come with the Vista on them, although they still exist. But basically, most things are moving towards the O3. But the V2s can also work with the O3, and they work just fine. The real limitation of the V2 is, number one, they're harder and harder to buy. So these days, you probably are going to be buying one used, which is not the end of the world, but it's not ideal in every case. And the other thing is that the V2, I think you have to ask yourself, when the successor to the O3 comes out, will the V2 goggle be compatible with it? The V2 goggle is currently compatible with the O3 Air unit. It's compatible with the next generation. And the question you have to ask is, will it be compatible with the second generation after that? And I think a lot of people would assume that the answer is going to be no, although we can't know for sure. So if you buy the V2 today, you may be locking yourself into an ecosystem of video transmitters that are, with the Vista, definitely at the end of their life and on the way out. And then the successor to the O3 is already kind of being teased, which means that maybe sometime in the next year, the O4 will come out. Maybe. Just, read the tea leaves. At which point, your V2 goggles may now not have any currently produced video transmitter that is compatible with them, which is something that would give some people pause. Whereas the Avatar X is at the beginning of its life. So those are some considerations. I'm not going to give you a straight answer. I'm going to just give you some things to think about. It's your money, so you have to decide for yourself. Let's see. Tom T, what's your opinion on buying a flight controller with an SPI receiver for a 3-inch? Is it better to buy a separate ELRS receiver or use the SPI? If the flight controller has an SPI receiver, I probably would use it. It would annoy me. But it probably would annoy me less than adding a receiver. Then again, it's not that hard to put an EP2 receiver on a 3-inch. Just stick it down. Don't even have an external antenna. That's a tough one. It depends. I'll tell you what. If the flight controller shipped with Betaflight 4.4 on it, so it already was ready to bind to ExpressLRS 3.x, I probably would just go with it. But if the flight controller shipped with Betaflight 4.3, then I probably would add the receiver. And you say, well, why not just upgrade the drone to Betaflight 4.4? Because when you buy a bind and fly, the manufacturer has it all PID-tuned and set up, and starting from scratch on a new version of Betaflight is kind of a pain in the ass. I probably would just add the receiver. I mean, you could go either way. Why does my drone keep accelerating even when I don't increase the throttle? Shreyansh me rotra. I'm going to guess that you have armed the drone with the props off, and then the motors speed up. This is a normal thing that happens when you arm the drone with props off. It's because the quadcopter, the flight controller, is trying to fly the drone, but since the props are off, then it can't fly the drone. And so it speeds the motors up, and it just keeps trying harder and harder to fly the drone. And nothing's happening, so it's just trying harder and harder, and that's why the motors speed up. And you might say, well, why is it trying to fly the drone? It's just sitting there on the ground. Well, even when the drone is sitting there on the ground, the flight controller is still trying to kind of push against the ground and balance it, and that creates a feedback loop. So that's normal. Where is Ghost? Asks Baldman FPV. They still have products selling, but support and community is almost non-existent. Yeah, I mean, that's the risk of a new control protocol. If it doesn't reach a critical mass of adoption, I got to tell you, that's why I say to a beginner getting into the hobby, you should bite the bullet and get over the learning curve of ExpressLRS. It's going to drive you crazy, potential. Some people, a lot of people, it's going to drive you crazy. Like, why didn't they put a damn bind button on the receiver? How hard would it be to put a bind button? Captain Bry. No, I'm not picking on you. This whole 3-plug thing is so freaking confusing. Why isn't there a bind button on the radio? Well, that's not how they do it. It's not how you do it. You got to bite the bullet and learn the new thing. And it's kind of a pain in the ass. I got to tell you, this MT12, oh, I'm pointing over there. Binding this MT12, I haven't even put a bind phrase in this. Oh my God, I need to put a bind phrase in this. Wow, I need a different bind phrase for my surface radio. Interesting. I just pushed bind on the radio, did the 3-plug thing on the receiver, and it bound. It was so nice. Because finally, we're starting to see receivers where they're shipping with the 3.x on it, and it'll just bind. I know you just replug 3 times.
I mean, and then you hide the bind button in the quad, you can't get to it. I mean, I feel like replug 3 times is just
Give me
better
both
than
of
a bind
them.
button.
Give me both of them. I want it all.
But then the manufacturers have to BOM in a bind button, and then they're all going to complain about it. Then it's got to take physical space, and like, I'm just saying, like,
excuses.
What's the point? Why is it better?
The point is this. Here's the point. The point is that some guy who doesn't know shit about shit, he's used to surface radios. He doesn't know shit about flight controllers. He doesn't know shit about firmware. And he's like, okay, I'm going to give this ExpressLRS thing a try. Where's the bind button? You're like, well, I don't have a bind button. I'm just saying, it might be nice if they also had a procedure that was consistent with what a person is used to. And then they can go through the learning curve eventually. It's just, I don't know. Why doesn't it have a bind button? That's the point. Why doesn't it have a bind button? Because they didn't do it that way. But they could have. And it would have simplified the induction of new people into the hobby, into ExpressLRS.
Why don't all the versions just work together? Why don't, you know what I mean? There's a bunch of things
but
we could ask, right?
If you say, why doesn't 3.x work with 2.x, as a person with any coding experience at all, you don't have to convince me that the backwards compatibility would have been a deal breaker. But like, if you're gonna, it's not hard to say, here's a GPIO pin on the ESP32, and that pin is the bind button. There's a million ways you can initiate binding. There's no reason why there couldn't be one more, and it's a button. I love bind phrases. I'm a big fan of bind phrases. I use bind phrases. I use Wi-Fi. But every time I imagine that I'm talking to somebody who has no experience with ExpressLRS, And the first thing I have to tell him is, don't push the button. That's a bootloader button. That's not a bind. I know it looks like a bind button, but here's how you bind an ExpressLRS receiver. You plug it in, and 3 times in a row. I'm like, oh, I feel so, like, I don't know. Anyway. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal once you figure it out. Anyway. I want everything. Captain Bry wants to know when's the next new product roundup. Oh my God, it's the beginning of December. Plenty, we got to do a new product roundup. We got to put together a list of products. I've been gone for so long, I bet there's a million of them. We have to get on that. Jury D'Ambros wants to know, do you find FPV races difficult to watch due to fast-paced movements and lack of clear visual cues? I don't. Like the way to watch an FPV race is on the screen, not in real life. There is almost no point to actually looking at the racetrack in person, in my opinion. It's very difficult to keep up with who's who and what's what. So like, I'm going to try to pull up. Like, I'm going to try to pull up a race, multi-GP nationals. So here, the first thing you have to do as a spectator is learn the course. Okay? Which, if you're a racer, you will learn the course pretty quickly after watching a few laps, because that's just a skill that racers develop. If you aren't able to learn the course, then it's going to be difficult to keep up with. So if I was going to multi-GP nationals as a spectator, the first thing I would do is get in Velocidrone and race the course enough times myself that I had learned the course, so that when I was spectating, I could know who was where on the track. And then I watch like this. I watch it like this, and I just take my favorite pilot. Or you can, sometimes they'll have an indication on screen on who's in the lead. I don't, 1, 2, is this who's in the lead? Right? And you can kind of watch where they are and who's getting close to who. But it is a little difficult to keep track of the action. Like who's close to who, because you can't really see each of the individual drones. But what I'll do is I'll just, like, at the beginning of the track, I'll have my favorite pilot who I want to watch, right? And I'll be like, okay, this time I'm going to watch Leviathan. And I'll watch him race, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, oh, he's not in first place. Okay, now I'm going to watch second place and see if he catches up, right? Coast FPV. You know? There's various ways to spectate it. It's nice with replays. But yeah, everybody just watches the big screen. Okay. Let's see here. Still asks, winter is coming and I'm thinking of flying even when there's snow outside. What will happen to the drone if I crash it in the snow? Will I damage the O3? The O3 will probably be fine, but the ESC might die. DJI video transmitters are fairly well waterproofed. Yeah, it is going back to the previous question, it is a real limitation in the ability of normal people to watch drone racing, is the fact that the courses that challenge the pilots are very complicated and difficult to watch if you're not skilled in the art of watching drone racing. It's like I remember watching hockey, and you know how nowadays they put the little highlight on the puck so you can follow the puck? But before then, if you kind of didn't know the flow of a hockey game, it could be really difficult to keep track of the puck and who had the puck and what they were doing with it. It's kind of like that. Like, it's a little hard to appreciate drone racing if you're not yourself a drone racer. Anyway, let's let's go back and check. We got a few more super chats coming in. Let's go ahead and make sure we get those before we come to the end of the stream. UAV Future, it's good to 5:30 a.m. Don't be awake at 5:30, UAV. I hope there's a good reason you're awake at 5:30 and not like you have insomnia. Okay, man? Good to see you here, man. UAV Futures, me, and XJet. Who else? Who are other old-timers who are still in the hobby? Stu, who was coming up with us? You and I came up together, man. I remember when you passed me in subs, and I was like, oh, that son of a bitch. With your frickin' $100 build, you son of a bitch. No, I mean that with love. Nurkala? Yeah. Paul Nurkala doesn't make a lot of content. He makes some content. I would not say that Paul Nurkala is first and foremost a YouTuber anymore. He's first and foremost a cinema pilot. You know, working with Mark Rober and other big shots. Let's Fly RC. Let's Fly RC is way past. He's new in terms of Project Blue Falcon. Of course, he's no longer around. Who's still around though? I don't know. Not as many. Okay. RIP Project Blue Falcon. Hell yeah. Andy RC still around? Drone Camps has been around. Was he around? When did Drone Camps get big? Was he already big when we came up, Stu? Or did he get big after us? XJet, of course. I already mentioned him. Well, I said Bruce Simpson. Okay. Good to see you, man. Here's a super chat from Tata Ron. Thank you for 50, not rupees. Those aren't rupees. Those are, oh shit. Are they pesos? Chilean pesos? No. Philippine pesos. I was close. They were pesos. Which one's better, Goggles 2 or Integra? Integra is cheaper. Goggles 2 has removable antennas and adjustable focus. Integra has built-in battery. That's basically it. I think for a lot of people, the lower price of the Integra is going to be worth it, and the things you lose aren't going to be that important. Spartan 329, thank you for $1. Let's see if you have a question. No, don't see any question from you, just $1 donation, so thank you for that. Deuce FPV says, I can't link my Vista to my goggles. When I power up the quad, I don't get a solid red light. You didn't say what goggles they are, Deuce. Thank you for a $20 super chat. Deuce FPV, what goggles are they? I can't answer the question without that. FPV Trucker Drone Mesh. He's kind of stopped making content. He was doing a lot of sort of nerdy testing and stuff similar to me. Definitely, you know, he stands out to me. We need to know what video you've got, what goggles you've got, Deuce FPV, the V2 goggles. Okay, Deuce, you need to downgrade the firmware on the Vista to the firmware ending with 0608. Okay? My guess is you have updated the firmware to the latest firmware. That firmware only works with the G2. You need to downgrade the firmware to 0608. Is the number one reason it won't bind.
I'll just mention, he says, I get no solid red light. If you don't have a light on the Vista, that means you don't have power going to the Vista.
Agree.
So you need to check the connector that you've connected to the Vista. You need to make sure the pins are in the right order, and you need to make sure there's not a VTX pit switch on the output power for the DJI.
Or just get a multimeter and carefully check the voltage at the Vista, but do carefully so you don't short the pins. Yeah, good point. There may be no power. Thank you, Bad for Life, also for pointing that out, and of course, Blunty, you too. Dobird Fly, thank you for a $5 super chat. I'm building a 2.5-inch Freestyle. The frame is the Odonata. We need an audio drop for the Odonata. of some kind. What AIO shall I use if I use the O3? Can you give me a suggestion? There's all AIO flight controllers. I kind of hold my nose because none of them are as good as I wish they would be. Also, you're putting an O3 on a 2.5 inch, which I think is a terrible decision, but obviously it's your money and you can do what you want with it. Which I think it's going to be, well, 2.5 will probably be okay, I guess. It'll be on the edge. What about the Flywoo? Okay, Flywoo has a 2-inch. Flywoo has a 2-inch with Vista that is okay. Probably the Flywoo, just because they sell a bind and fly with it. And I like Beta FPV comes to mind, but their quality is so hit or miss. The other AIO that I like is the Gep RC. So I would look for a Flywoo or a Gep RC AIO, and you're going to want like a 7 or 12 amp. I don't know what exact ESC rating they have. Let's look at their AIOs. It's not going to be a 1S, right? Well, is it going to be a 2S? Or 3S? What voltage? Abraham suggests the Darwin F4 is excellent on both of his Odos. Abraham, the big Odonata fan over on my Discord server. This one, it's an F411. I guess that's okay. Is this the one, Aber? The iFlight Beast isn't made anymore, Ton. It was solid. I think this is the one he's recommending. It'll catch up eventually. 1 to 3S, yeah. 15 amps is plenty. That sounds pretty solid. All right, on the strength of Abraham's recommendation, we'll go with this one. He's built Odonatas. He's built 2 Odonatas and says it's good. Nicely done. I love you, Joshua and Blunty. I'm just stoned listening. Thank you, Blackbug Digital. Blackbug Digital, in an earlier stream, you asked if I would show your reel. And I didn't, because I didn't want to, I wanted to look at it before, before I showed it, you know. But I checked it out. It's pretty cool. So let's take a second and look at Blackbug Digital's reel. It's pretty good. So this is Blackbug Digital. I'm not showing the music because I don't want to risk getting a copy strike. That's pretty solid Cinewhoop stuff. Wow, this is a beautiful location. I kind of wish a couple of those shots were a little longer. I kind of liked them. Like, I feel like a few of these shots, it's cut, and I've been like, I want to see more of that. I don't know if that's, I mean, that says something, because usually if you show me content, I'll be bored and be like, this is terrible. I hate it. Please, though. Shouldn't say that. People will be like, I can't show Bardwell's stuff. He'll hate it. He's bored. I do like people showing me their stuff. I like the connection and human interaction. I like that you want me to see your stuff and that you want to connect with me and I can connect with you by looking at your stuff. Most of the time, the stuff that is not in itself that impressive, but I still want to see it. This is pretty impressive. This is actually pretty good. That's my point. Damn. Like, your color grade is real solid on some of these. There's no accident that the colors look that good. I don't know what the hell's going on here. Yeah, there's some good stuff here. There's some good stuff here. You've got an eye for some of these moves. Like, a few of these moves, I've thought there was nothing really there in terms of, like, a story or it was just like a move. Most of these moves, though, I feel like you're sort of telling a story. You're going somewhere. There's some intentionality behind the move. The lighting is pretty solid. The scenes are usually interesting. It's a solid reel, dude. It's solid. See? Oh, bold of you to go backwards like that. Got to know your area. Oh, really nice little reveal there. Would be good if there were people in here, but I understand why there aren't. Yeah. Stabilization is it's pretty good reel, dude. So there you go. Thank you for submitting that. Be closer to the building, though. Where are you going? Okay. That was just an excuse to show your logo. Very nice, man. Very nice. Very nice. You got a bright future. Or present. ELRS Diversity Happy Model Dual or Radiomaster RP3? Is the Radiomaster RP3 a true diversity? That's the question. Or is it antenna diversity? Can anyone...
It's antenna diversity.
That's what I thought, because I'm looking at the board and I'm not seeing the two chips. Okay, so the RP3 is antenna diversity. That means it's worse. Beta FPV Super D or the Happy Model TCXO Dual. Those are the sort of, if you're looking for diversity, the like real choices these days. I can tell you the Beta FPV Super D has a shitty Wi-Fi antenna. The Wi-Fi range on the Beta FPV Super D is like 6 inches. I spent so freaking long trying to flash that thing, and I was like, it's right here on my desk. And I think I was bitching to Captain Bry about it, and we looked, and the antenna is like tiny. And I took the fucking receiver, and I put it like right next to my phone, and it worked. So if you do get the Super D, you should know. It's about, you should know that. You should, excuse me, also know that Radiomaster has a pre-order for a true diversity receiver, which I will totally buy over the Beta FPV or the Happy model once it comes out. Robocopter says, do you know of any freestyle contests? Would love to see more outlets for freestyle flyers other than social media. Thank you for a $5 super chat. Robocopter. At Rotor Riot Rampage, they had a freestyle contest this year. It was a big success, and I assume they'll do it again. Bachgrinder usually has a freestyle contest as well. Don't know when he's running his next one. And in addition, there's, well, obviously there's International Game of Whoop, which is a tiny whoop freestyle contest. Those are some things. Brian. Soham Thakur. I will get to it in order. There are a couple people ahead of you, that's all. No one in chat knows when I will get to your super chat, though. I know. It's coming. Look. See? There you are. It's coming. Robocopter says, no, we got that. Brian says, I've been a patron for a couple of months, but I'm not sure how to access the Discord. Thank you. Brian, I thank you for a $20 super chat. You didn't have to do that in order to get access to the Discord. Brian, if you will email me, patrons@joshuabardwell.com, or if you'll just DM me on Discord if you can, or you can message me on Patreon. I will send you. You got a link to the Discord server in the confirmation message when you signed up as a patron, but maybe you lost that or didn't see it. So, I'll send you the link again and tell you what you need to do. Just DM me, okay? I don't want to publish the link here. On the Discord is just for patrons, so I don't want to just publish the link here. Talawan Pak An, thank you for a $5 super chat. 5-inch ESC PWM frequency for freestyle, 24 or 48. I will always start with the lower PWM frequency because it gives stronger braking, and in my opinion, stronger braking gives better handling. It's a small difference, but it's a non-negligible difference. The disadvantage of lower PWM frequency can be less smoothness, increased mid-throttle oscillation, and sometimes issues with filtering. So I'll start with the lower RPM, lower PWM. If I get any of those issues, I'll consider increasing it, but I'll start with the lower number. Soham Thakur, it's your turn. Thank you for 100 rupees. I'm starting out in FPV. What FPV system should I prefer? I mean to race and fly casual freestyle. If you intend to get serious about racing, then analog or HD0 should be your only choice. There are races that allow DJI and Walksnail in, but there are many races that don't because of the way they interact with the timing systems. Walksnail actually just released a race mode that should work perfectly with timing systems, but there are still issues with having digital goggles at the pilot station because digital goggles transmit. HD0 is digital. It doesn't do it that way, though. So if you're serious about racing, your life will be smoother if you have a system like analog or HD0. In addition, the lower and consistent latency of analog and HD0 does make for faster racing at, once you get past a certain skill point, the latency of the Walksnail and DJI will hold you back. So that's the direction I would send you there. Yeah. Okay. Now we're caught up on Super Chats. Fantastic. I want to remind you guys. If you weren't here at the beginning of the stream, after the stream ends, I will be doing an AMA on r/FPV. Here is the link. I already have 140 comments, so it's gonna be a while. Would love to have you over there. I will be answering questions from at least 3 to 4 p.m., maybe longer. I don't know. I'll just remind you that that's coming. We've got about 5 minutes left in the stream, though. Let's go back to the regular chat. Blunty, do you have any of these? We got like 30 questions still in the queue. If I don't get to your question, please know that you're free to email me. Anyone is free to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. I answer almost all questions without regard for whether you're a patron. I don't even care. If you are a patron, you can email patrons@joshuabardwell.com, and I give those questions higher priority because those people pay my bills, obviously. But I still get to almost everybody else. And if you don't get your question answered on stream, please feel free to email me, and I'll do my best to help you out. You got any couple more we could get, or you want me to just pick one randomly, Blunty? What do you think?
I figured you could just take a couple randomly at the end here.
Okay. Does the Foxier 5-watt video transmitter transmit telemetry data? Eric Stephanie. I'm intrigued by your question, Eric. That's why I took it. But the answer is simple. Video transmitters just transmit video data. It's just an analog video feed similar to an old television station. There's no functionality for digital telemetry as far as I'm aware. So that's going to be a no on that one. But maybe I've misunderstood your question. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe I've misunderstood some aspect of your question, and that's sort of what intrigues me. But the simple answer to your question is no. Let's see. Oh, is there a Nazgul 4? I guess the time is about right. What do you think about the Nazgul 4? Oh, the Nazgul F4. That's the 4-inch Nazgul? My thinking is that probably the difference between a 4-inch and a 5-inch, like, it's not going to be so much smaller and lighter that you wouldn't better just go with a 5-inch. But if you don't intend to carry a GoPro, a 4-inch can be a little bit more durable and still have great performance, great acrobatic performance. So that's how I would go that direction. Let's see here. Do you have a good recommendation for a 4S 5-inch under $300? Yeah. So the first one I would show you, notice I said show you, not necessarily recommend you, is the Darwin Johnny 240. This wing is $226. It cuts a lot of corners. And all of the parts are like 5 years old. Like, I don't mean literally they were made 5 years ago. I mean, maybe they were, I don't know. But like in terms of their design, they're like super out of date. But I bought one. I flew it. The only thing wrong with it is that the camera is absolute trash. Throw it out. So you need to spend 20, 25 bucks on a new camera and replace this camera. But even still, you're going to be under 300 bucks. But is that 4S? It is 4S. My God. The other one to look at is the iFlight Nazgul V3. Now this is only 6S. So, but still, it is a way better quad than the Johnny for not that much more money. And if you can see your way around to get 6S batteries, this would be a solid, solid recommendation. Okay? Okay. Folks, that's going to bring us to the end of the stream. Again, if you asked a question and it didn't get answered, feel free to email me. jb@joshuabardwell.com is my email. And I will get around to answering those as soon as I can. In the meantime, I'm going to go take a short break, and then I will see you over on r/FPV for the AMA. All right. That's it. Thanks, Blunty. Great stream, man. Thank you for your help.
Bardwell.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.